All right, I'm with Michael Clawson. This is wonderful. You know why this is wonderful, Michael?
Why?
Because you're a professional. You've done this before. You have your own podcast. So
It's been fun, yeah. I'm happy to join you.
so it's nice and you've done radio and all sorts of different things, or what we'll find out. I don't know. Maybe you haven't done radio, but
I haven't done radio, so the podcast is my first
Yeah.
adventure with a hot mic like this.
Ever really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. But you've done, video things in the past. I know you've been, interviewed me in the past.
That's
for
true.
your
We've
magazine.
done some video here and there.
I guess it's kind of like radio. I did radio actually for a while, which is one of the reasons I go, oh, this seems like a natural kind of flip over to the podcast mode.
The joke is that I have, how does it go? I have a face for radio and a voice for newspapers.
No, that's not true. But there is one good shot on the web, and I encourage everybody to Google Michael Clawson under images. No, you were probably like, I don't know, 16 or 18 or something. It was a war. You had moved up. They had given you some kind of a award that you were so good that you were allowed to be in the newsletter, and they have a face. It's like this.
I can't even think of what you might be referring to.
Oh, you'll see it.
Oh, great.
So I did do a little research. I just wanted to do a little bit,
Yeah.
just because I don't know that much, right? I mean, I know some. You've written for Essential West magazine, for our magazine in the past, and so I know you're a fantastic writer. And I've listened to your podcast.
Thank you.
Which is actually very, very informative and good. And I'm not just saying that; it really is. I enjoy it, and one of the reasons I want to have you on is to promote that podcast as well.
Well, thank you. I need to say right now, you've taught us a lot about podcasting, and what you've done here is really exciting. So you sort of, broke the mold and started doing this in a really exciting way. I mean, we're just, we're not going to be able to copy what you're doing. It's so wonderful, but it's nice to have a voice in the sort of the medium.
So I get to ask, what did I teach you?
Just the fact that you could do it just week after week. I think there's the commitment of just doing it. There's some shoe leather involved, right? You just you create a studio, you create a schedule, you invite artists, you just do it. You just go out and do it, and there's a lot that can be learned from that.
Yeah, I think I did say that to you. I mean, when we were talking about you doing a podcast, it was like, that is the hardest thing.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about it. I mean, you can set it up. Anybody can do a podcast, but it's making it past 50 or whatever. Mm-hmm. 50 is a good one. 25 even for most of them. I think they make it for about 10, and then like, oh, this is not as fun as I thought it would be.
So we just hit, I think, 55.
Yeah,
and we got great ideas. We're gonna hit 100 in no time. So we're excited about it. Yeah.
Yes, I don't know how many I'm gonna hit, but I'm just gonna
over 100, right? Over probably 200.
Yeah, it's getting up there close to that. Yeah, it's just one a week, every week.
Yeah.
Or this week it was 3, I think, actually.
Wow.
But well, they come when they come. That's the deal, right? This is the Art Dealer Diaries. So if somebody comes in that I wasn't expecting or whatever, and they're just really interesting, and they will go for it, I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
So that was a whole premise of my show, which is the stories that come across me. So.
Nice.
And
it's a good premise too. I like the setup that you use to get you to the places you want to go. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, it's just if I find it interesting, then it's on the show.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to necessarily even have to be art. They almost all have an art thread. Otherwise they probably wouldn't be on my art gallery. But I had a research scientist on that was the first person that was doing cognitive stuff for somatic diseases, but he worked with the Navajos in like the 50s, and he's a collector. But the real story was his endocrinology thing, and Seymour is his name. You can look him up. And he came in, and he's like 96, 97, and he was like wanting to consign something. I'm sitting down talking to him, like, holy, this guy's amazing. And then in the podcast, he's talking about Babe Ruth, meeting Babe Ruth.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, oh, man, this is what it's all about. So you should do that, too, maybe. Just not set anything up. Just have a door that somebody can knock on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you and I probably share a similar belief that everyone's got a story. And
yeah, they do.
You start diving into anyone's story, and it's just interesting. You just ask the right questions. You just talk to them. and ask follow up when they say, oh, this is where I was in 1973. Well, why? What brought you there? You start asking these questions, and everyone's story is fascinating at some point.
This is a perfect segue. So, Michael,
oh no,
tell me where you grew up.
So yeah, I grew up in Phoenix, in sort of the west part of Phoenix, the West Valley. Born and raised right there in Phoenix.
What did your folks do?
My dad is an engineer. He's a metal fabricator, I guess would be the right terminology there. So he's always been in CNC machining and sort of just doing metal work. My mom was worked in a school office, in my school office, which was fun as a child, having your mom nearby and being able to access you at any time, especially if you misbehaved. But
I hear some pain there, Michael.
No, it's fun. What's wild is my mom started there when I was young, 6 or 7 years old. She's still there. She's still
this like an elementary school?
An elementary school, yeah.
And so what does she do in the office? What was her role?
She's kind of the office manager.
She's the person when you come in. She's the gateway.
Yes, and she works directly with the principal, and all the data and the records in the back. I mean, she does all that. Yeah. She's great. She's really great, and she loves her job. But it was great. I got to see my mom at school. We'd ride to school together and that sort of thing. But then my dad had this fascinating career that he always involved me and my brother in, just metal work and.
In what way?
I remember growing up spending Saturdays at his shop and getting, standing at the big CNC machine that's as big as, as a room, as he programmed things into the computer and designed stuff. He started designing aluminum wheel molds for cars, and then just branched out. He started doing all kinds of different things, started his own business. And
so is he still in business?
He still is. He had his own business for a while, and him and my brother ran it, and they sold the business, they closed it up, and someone else started running it. But he's still in machining. He's working for one of his best friends in Central Phoenix, still doing the stuff he loves. He's I not that we want to talk about my dad, but
we did. That's part of who you are.
I have to. I care deeply for my dad, and he taught me everything I know. Like, my work ethic is his work ethic. He always was just always a hard worker.
Oh, I just thought you were going to say knocked off at 5 p.m. and head down to.
No, I just remember just him working on things until they were right. And
what he's doing is an art form, right? I mean, that's making art in a way.
I think so.
I would think so, for sure.
He is the kind of person who we're out in the backyard and you're looking at, he's fixing a fence. And I remember this. I remember we had a fence we needed fixed. It was a big double gate.
Yeah.
And him just engineering that thing until it was perfect.
I'm sure.
And just, and cutting the metal and doing the bracing on it, and just looking at it today, the gate still stands. Man, he was a smart guy. I really I appreciate sort of the work ethic that he sort of gave to me.
And he probably has to be somewhat of a perfectionist in a weird way to say that, just to, like you said, to make sure the gate was perfect.
Yeah.
And there's not any room for error, right? And metalwork really isn't, right? I wouldn't think.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
So, and that probably helps you well in what you do, as far as in writing and editing and those kind of things, I would think. That's very detailed oriented.
Definitely. Yeah. I think there's just a part of it. You just, you check your numbers, you check your facts, you kind of nose to the books, elbows to the grindstone, or whatever the saying is. You just kind of work at it.
Yeah, I think that seems like that would suit you perfectly for your position, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But so when you're, just out of curiosity, so when you wanted to get out of school, you couldn't write the fake doctor's note, right, to your mom?
Definitely not. We did do that in high school, though.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But middle school or grade school, through 8th grade was I had to behave myself. Not that I was a bad student, but there was definitely my mom knew all my teachers very closely.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So
well, you probably got a really good primary education because of it, honestly.
Yeah, I don't. I was a public school. I definitely, we're talking about our own kids. My wife and I are talking about sending her take our own kids. And one of the discussions we had was there's great public schools near us. There's great private schools, but I had nothing against the public school that I grew up in. And I learned a lot, and having my mom there was great. But I have no regrets.
I'm a product of public schools because there were no private schools where I went. There were only one high school, one junior high, that kind of stuff. You can find that out later. Michael wants to interview me on a podcast, so you can find that out there. So my question would be, you go through middle school, and at that time, were you interested in art at all? Do you think, or photography, or any of that kind of the arts?
No. So it's funny. I started high school, had no clue what I wanted to do. None.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
No, and totally. Yeah. I hear that a lot. No one really knows until later on. My first day of high school was in a little town called Tolleson, Arizona. The high school is Tolleson High School, and my first class, my first day, everything was journalism. And I don't even know. I couldn't even tell you right now how I chose that. I have no clue how I chose journalism. But there I was. That was a freshman in a big school with a lot of kids in a journalism class. And it clicked. It just worked. And I never left it.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you probably signed up for it because you somehow thought it was going to be of interest. Were you a reader? Did you like to read?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely like to read. And I guess I do have a vague recollection of there was a description when you were choosing your classes that, before I started high school, there was a description that journalism class made the school newspaper. And I remember thinking that sounds kind of fun. Maybe I'll do that. And that's probably all it was. Like, it's weird to me to think that that's how careers are started.
Yeah. They can be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it happens all the time in the art world. I think you have one really good art teacher that inspires and ignites.
Yeah.
And it can just be that ignition. And then if the kid gets ignited, then if they have they don't have to even have the ability. That's the funny thing. They just have to have the drive and want to do it. So, and that's the same with sports. It's the same with everything. But so did you have a good journalism teacher in that freshman year? Do you remember him?
I did, yeah.
See, there you go.
Yeah. His name was Mr. James. I forget his first name. I think it was Daryl James.
Yeah, so you know his name.
Yeah, and he was an actual journalist. I remember after he had that position for a little bit, and then he left and he went to the East Valley Tribune, which operated, I think, out of Mesa or Tempe at the time. And so, I remember being really impressed with that. Like, this wasn't just some high school teacher. Like, this was a real journalist. He was working, at the high school, teaching us stuff.
And so when you take that course and you get ignited, did you start working for the newspaper at that time, the school newspaper?
Yeah, so I did. And pretty much from that moment on until I graduated.
Yeah. You were hooked.
And when I left, I was the editor of the school newspaper. And that teacher eventually left, and we had some others, and the quality of the newspaper kind of went all kinds of places, and some of it under my watch. Like, it wasn't the best newspaper, but I mean, we were high school kids.
I was going to say, you were also in high school.
Yeah.
And your mom wasn't at the front door anymore, at the gate of the high school, so you could do a few more interesting things, I would think. So when you you finish that, and then college, you go to ASU?
I did, yes. Yeah. I went to ASU, Walter Cronkite School of Journalism. That's kind of where I went.
Did Walter Cronkite go there? Is that why it's called that?
I don't know. I don't know the history there, but I know that he, at the time when I was there, Walter Cronkite was still alive, and he would show up to lectures, and cool. It was awesome. Like, I'll tell you, that was pretty cool. And I remember one time I was later on, I'm sure we'll get to this, but I was a photographer at one point in my career, and I was also still at ASU, and I brought my camera. And once, and I took just a really great picture of him, and I thought, man, this is a great picture. And then, of course, Walter Cronkite died a couple of years later, and I remember seeing obituaries and the pictures they had of him, like late, a lot of the images of Walter Cronkite are him in, his Vietnam reporting, or him at the JFK announcement or the moon landing. These are sort of the classic images. Right. But anytime during, for those obituary sort of like articles, they'd have a late period shot of Walter Cronkite. Right. And I remember thinking, like, this isn't as good as mine. Like, mine was really good.
You still have it?
I still have it, yeah.
So what I'd like you to do, if you will, is give it to us. We'll put it on the podcast.
Okay.
And so, by the way, people who are watching this, you get to see it. If you don't, if you just listen to it, then you won't get to see.
I'll pull it up for you. Yeah,
but we'll put Walter Cronkite. Yeah, he was amazing. I remember watching him as a kid. He was the mainstay. It was middle of the road, right? I mean, they called it back then as they saw it. There wasn't a left or a right. There was just, this is kind of the news, and you believed it. You didn't go, oh, this is fake news or anything else.
And when he showed up, his voice was still intact. He still sounded like Walter Cronkite. I mean, you could hear him. This is Walter Cronkite. And I just remember him sitting there and just thinking, gosh, this is like, it feels like no time has passed. Like, I wasn't alive for the moon landing or the JFK assassination, but it really felt like that guy in no age difference. It was really weird.
Yeah, I mean, they're still engaged, and the voices. I mean, that is the thing. The voices, that's what people remember about him. I mean, I remember him taking off his glasses, for the JFK thing. And the president had died at 3:23 on, and it's like, wow. And I remember those things, not well, but even as a child, I was probably 4 when that happened. There's when there's pain around, you somehow incorporate that and know something's not right, no matter how old you are. So,
well, that video, of course, is very moving, but also the moon landing video I always love, because at one point he takes his glasses off there too. Yeah. And sort of rubs his hands together, and there's just like elation on his face. You could tell he's just like, oh my gosh, this is the best moment. And you hear it in his voice. But to have a guy who could do both of those things is awesome.
And so did you want to be that guy?
Never. So, and the way the Cronkite School worked, I don't know if it still is this way now. There's a broadcasting department, and there's a print journalism department. So I never went into the broadcasting side. I've heard it was great. They have a PBS station there that they work with. So the students there get, hands-on sort of experience in broadcasting. I just never did it. I had no interest in being on camera as we're on camera.
Remember, look at that shot on Google. But when you are, doing this, you said you were doing photography too. Were you taking photography in college, or was that part of your curriculum?
No. There was a photography department. I'm trying to remember. It might have been sort of looped into the fine art photography sort of area, but I'm pretty sure that the journalism school had like a photojournalism class. I don't know how extensive it was, but I never took those classes either. So right out of high school, I got an internship at a newspaper in the west side of Phoenix. So it's called the West Valley View. It was, at the time, it was a really...
That's where the photo is.
Oh, there you go.
The West Valley View.
Yeah. At the time, it was a really big newspaper. It was a free publication, and if you lived in the West Valley, you just got it on your doorstep.
But advertisers paid for that.
Yes.
Sound familiar?
Yeah. It was a big newspaper, though. Lots of people would get it, and there was a big staff. And I was... the editor at the time was doing some sort of career day type thing at the high school, and I went to it, and I remember someone said, "Oh, you have the editor of the high school newspaper here," and I remember feeling so embarrassed, because I was like really just wanted to like listen to this guy talk and pick his brain, and he looked exactly like Dustin Hoffman in All the President's Men, like. I don't even know what this guy looked like anymore, because all I see is Dustin Hoffman from All the President's Men. And I was really impressed because I'm sure you've seen the movie. Dustin Hoffman plays a journalist, a very famous one.
Right.
Anyway, so I went up to him afterwards and I said, "Hey, I really like what you guys are doing. Do you offer internships?" And he said, "Sure, come aboard." So I hadn't even graduated high school yet. I got an internship for writing, and I was a writer there. But after I'd gone there, it's just kind of weave back into your question. After I'd been there for a year or two, they said, "Do you want to take a camera?" I was doing these, I was going out and doing reporting, and they said, "Why don't you take a camera and do some stuff?" And I didn't know how to use it. My younger brother, he had taken a photography class at the high school, and he taught me how to basically use a camera.
Yeah. And this is before digital, right?
This was everything was filmed.
Let's explain that. By the way, I'll take a photo of you while you're here. So for the podcast. That just reminds me.
Yeah.
A moment. There we go.
It was all film. It was all film.
And so you incorporated that kind of into what you were doing at that point then?
Yeah, definitely. And there was a lot of value, from from an editor's point of view, it's like, well, why don't we send a guy who could do the reporting and the photography out, and he can just do everything? And that worked out really well. I mean, that was basically my career for the next 15 years.
Really?
Yeah.
You worked at that place for 15 years from out of high school, out of college?
I think it was probably 14, but it was really close to the full, the 15. But yeah, 14 years.
And so, did your position change over that time frame?
Yeah. I started as an intern. I was paid. I remember that. It was a paid internship, which I was very grateful for. And then I just kept taking on more and more things. And I migrated to everything. I did crime. I did education. I did beat reporting. I did
movies and stuff too, right?
Yeah, I did movies and stuff. And that's a big thing later on. But I mean, early on, I was doing a little bit of everything. And then, of course, photography as well. And at one point, I remember saying man, I need to go to a dentist, or I need to go to a doctor, and it's really expensive. Can you guys help me out? And they said, well, why don't we just put you on staff and you can have benefits and health insurance.
Back when health insurance, you could afford to do that.
Yeah. But I remember thinking wow, okay, I guess I'm not an intern anymore. This is my career now. So it was, but I did a little bit of everything there, including the entertainment section later on, which was a lot of fun, which brings me to that's what brought me into the arts.
Was the entertainment.
Yeah.
And did you just kind of naturally flow to that? Or did they say, oh, we need somebody to review movies? Or
we had a guy there, and I forget his name, but I forget his role. I want to say he was the sports editor or something. And he had expressed some interest in some movies, and they'd send him to the movies, every now and again. The marketing teams in town who, in the Phoenix market, Phoenix is a big market. They have a number of marketing companies there that market for the movie studios, so they send out invites to all the newspapers and the broadcasting stations and everything. They want people to review these movies because it gets butts in the seat, that sort of thing. And so that we would get invites to all these press screenings, and he couldn't go to all of them. And he's like, hey, why don't you go review one? And then it was I was reviewing 2 a week, and then 3 a week, and then it was at one point I was doing 5 or 6 movies a week.
And it was all for the newspaper?
It was all for the newspaper. And it was just this little, it was little when I left it, but it was big at the time. I mean, we were doing 70, 80 pages a week.
Yeah.
A newspaper, and we'd have movie reviews or concert reviews or whatever. And so I just sort of, on my own, just sort of developed an entertainment section that was a lot of fun.
And was the fun of that watching the movie and being engaged with it, or was the fun of it watching it didactically and picking it apart and making notes and that kind of stuff as you watched it? I mean, I can say as a sports doctor, I remember when you are a team doctor or watching athletes, you don't know the games going on. You're just looking at the athletes, not the game. So you don't even know what the score is really. And is that the same when you're doing a theater movie?
So a little bit to a degree, but I feel like my sort of perspective on movie writing changed a lot. Because early on, I wasn't really influenced by anybody. I was just kind of doing my own thing. So a lot of it was kind of snarky and mean. And if the performance was bad, I'd just kind of tear it apart. And I just kind of, But later on, I realized it doesn't have to be that way. And so I did start to react less to what was happening in the movie, and just you sort of go with the flow with what the movie was offering. And you sort of have to get in the mindset of the film. What was the director going for? What was he wanting you to do? He doesn't want you to sit there and pick it apart. Go into the movie and appreciate it for what the director's wanting you to experience, and then have an experience with that and sort of review that. And so
really from the director's point of view.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in directors. They're there crafting the story. I mean, there's a screenwriter and there's a cinematographer and there's actors, there's all things, but it's the director who's the one who's sort of controlling the tone and the mood and what you should be feeling at any given moment. And so I feel like I give them the leeway to do what they need to do, and then figure out the movie later, but just go in sort of willing to surrender yourself to the film. So I didn't learn that right away.
And what was it that made you be able to go from snarky, ripping people apart, to, okay, I'm going to enjoy this movie for what it is and see the vision that the director has, even not so much the actors, really, it sounds like. What was it?
The thing I think that did it was I'd been reading some really great stuff at the time. Tony Scott was with the New York Times. He was doing their writing, and he was great.
Yeah.
But like, and I know everyone has a different experience with Roger Ebert. They think of him as like the TV guy, right? Like thumbs up, thumbs down, you know. But his writing for the Chicago Sun-Times was brilliant. It was really, really good. And he was the kind of person who could go into a movie and just sort of be captivated by it and sort of surrender himself to the film and what it was trying to do. And so I remember reading a lot of his reviews and just really appreciating him and coming away from film just like enjoying it a whole lot more.
Right.
There was just like so much more to it. Like you didn't have to sit there and just beat up on these actors who might have been worthy to beat up on.
Right.
But just like go in just like really enjoying sort of what the director is trying to do. But anyway, Ebert was great. And I reached out to him a couple of times while he was alive, and we ended up just sharing some emails. Not very much, but it was, they're very meaningful to me now looking back on them.
But not Siskel.
Not Siskel. Gene might have passed away by that time. I'm not sure. I'm not sure the timeline on that. But he was always, he was an interesting figure. I don't know if you've read much about him, but he was very much sort of like me in my early career. That was him in his early career. He was kind of a rude, sort of gruff person. He was not very nice. Sometimes he'd beat up on things. But as he experienced life, his outlook changed. Like he was an alcoholic. He went to AA. He never told anyone. He only mentioned it many years later. Like, this is what I went through.
Yeah, I think no, that was Ebert that did the book at the end of his life. That was really a hit. I don't think Siskel, I'm not sure if he did. But I always found his reviews the best, actually, when I'd watch
Ebert
them.
or Siskel?
Siskel.
Oh, really?
I did.
They're both great, I think.
Yeah, it was funny. It was the one I liked.
But Ebert was I mean, just an entirely unique person in the sense that what he experienced later in life, he got cancer in his mouth.
Right.
And they had to remove much of his lower jaw.
Right.
And he couldn't eat and he couldn't talk. But like his writing got really interesting from that point of view. And he started just having like these really great periods where he would just talk about things he loved. It's like, why do we got to beat up on things all the time? And he started talking about movies he loved. That's when he started making these books. I think they called them the great films. And he would just talk about movies that he loved. And
he saw the end. He saw his finite as a human.
Yeah.
And why put negativity when you can have love, right?
Oh, totally.
And all the things. I mean, he's done this for his life, right? I mean, we all go in that way, I think. Is there a movie that you really, or a couple movies at that time that you really go, those were the movies?
Oh gosh, I get asked this a lot, and I was asked this a lot when I was writing for the paper. Just like, what movies are your favorite? It's so hard to pick one.
Besides Pulp Fiction.
I love Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction's a great movie.
One of my favorites.
The one I remembered, I did take some film classes at ASU, and their film program was really spectacular at the time. I don't know, and maybe anyone listening to this was like, oh, ASU was terrible. I don't have any comparison. I just remember taking film classes, film history classes, and being just totally overwhelmed at how great they were. And I think it might have been, I had sort of that freshman year high school journalism experience. My freshman year in college at ASU in Tempe, I took a film history class, and the first movie they showed was The Big Sleep. And Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall. And it was the first time I'd really like given time to some of those old movies. And it just won me over, like completely. Like I was like, this is it. And so I really have like a really deep connection to that movie. I really enjoy it. I revisit it probably maybe once every year, every other year.
Wow.
But that's like, for many, many years, that was the film that did it. I mean, obviously it's a great film. It's great performances by those two. And the story behind it's always kind of fun. They shot it, and then, they realized they were missing a bunch of stuff. So they went back and reshot it, parts of it. And those reshot parts are some of the most famous portions of the movie. But
who was the director of that?
I think that might have been Howard Hawks. I could be wrong. It's been a bit. But it was one of those movies that the movie itself was great, but what it meant to me, like the symbolic sort of nature of the film and how it touched me at that point in my career and that point in my life, that's why it's so special to me.
And that was your freshman year, right?
That was my freshman year.
So your freshman year in high school, freshman year in college.
And for some reason, it was a film history class, but it might have actually been more specific. It might have been film noir, because I remember watching a bunch of film noir that year, and it's the only reason I think it had to be, because we watched Out of the Past and Double Indemnity, and all these great sort of noir films.
Right.
The Killers. We watched both versions of The Killers. There's one with Lee Marvin and Ronald Reagan, and there's two versions of it. I mean, there's so many great movies, and we watched all of them, and they were all my favorite films for 20 years.
So do you still watch movies like this? I mean, do you still go and see them?
I don't not for review purposes.
No, I just mean for you.
All the time.
Yeah,
all the time.
When was the last time you actually were in a movie theater?
Ooh.
2019.
It would have been 2000. Possibly 2020.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at the release schedule. What opened in January or February?
Yeah.
That was probably it. It's wild that I haven't thought about it.
I know, right?
Do you know what was the last movie you saw in theaters?
Dune, recently.
Oh, recently, yeah.
Yeah. But that was the first one I'd seen since the pandemic. It was fantastic, by the way.
I watched it at home.
Yeah.
On HBO, but
not the same.
Not the same, I know. And we got a great TV and great sound, but I know you're missing out if you're not seeing those things in a theater.
Yeah, and I actually liked the first movie. A lot of people didn't, the original movie was Sting. But the book's amazing, of course. So I'm already ready for the second. I think the second one will be better than the first.
I'm excited about it too, and I enjoyed the movie, and I've had the book for years, and I've always there's a barrier because the dialogue.
Yeah.
And some of the character names, it's a hard book.
Yeah.
But the movie sort of unlocked it for me. I'm like, now I think I have an excuse to dive into the book now.
Yeah, there
I'm
you go.
really,
And
I'm
your
really
free
excited
time.
about it. Yeah, whenever that may be.
With your 3 children. And your oldest child is how old?
She's 6.
Yeah, good luck. So you work with this newspaper for 15 years, right? And so then what happens? Why did you leave, or what did you do?
So it's kind of a complicated thing. The magazine, the newspaper was failing.
Yeah. What year would this have been?
This would have been 2012, 2013.
Yeah. So the internet is kicking in pretty heavily at this point.
And what's wild is that newspaper had made it pretty far. I mean, I was there for September 11th, and newspapers were struggling. The economy struggled. I mean, we made it through that. And then, of course, as soon as we're out of all that, the housing crisis.
Right.
We made it through the housing crisis. Now, the West Valley at the time, it was houses everywhere. I mean, was sort of its MO, was let's just build houses on top of houses.
Right.
And so the housing market crushed the Phoenix area really bad.
Yes, it did. 50%.
But the newspaper made it. And it was sort of after that, it was just in a really weird place. I met my wife at the newspaper. We met there. She was a reporter, and so they let her go, and there was no explanation, and there was just a bunch of weird things. There was cost cutting and just really odd
they were
ways.
struggling. They're dependent on advertising, and there's no advertisers.
I remember there was a point, and I've mentioned this to colleagues. I remember in the summer, AC's running, and when you see your publisher walking through the building adjusting thermostats, that was just like, ooh, is this a bad sign? But that's what happened. I remember that was sort of the sign that things were not going well.
Yeah.
And the magazine actually still exists. The newspaper still exists. The owner had sold it after I left. But I saw the writing on the wall. I didn't want to be there anymore. I felt like they had treated my wife really awful. And I thought, you know what? I'm ready for a change.
Yeah. And so what was the change?
The change was I saw an ad for an art magazine, and I thought I could do that. And it turns out I maybe I can. I don't know. The jury's still out on that one.
No, you obviously can. You keep moving up the ranks. So.
Oh, thanks.
And so that was for Western Art Collector? Was the ad?
Yeah, the ad might have actually been for the parent company, International Artist Publishing.
Yes.
But
and she was out of Australia, that person that originally?
Yeah. Vincent Miller was out of Australia. Yeah. Josh Rose was running it out of Scottsdale.
And when did Western Art Collector start?
Gosh. So
I know he was on the back cover to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, what, 08? Gosh, I should know
I don't
this.
remember. No, I don't
we
know.
just talked about it. Yeah, just recently. We're coming up on 15 years.
Okay, so at 212, it had been in business for 4 years probably. Mm-hmm. And so there's 5 magazines in this company, parent company, correct? And did they all kind of start at the same time, or was...
They started different times. So I believe International Artist was the first publication.
Yeah, I might as well list them all so people know what the magazines are.
Yeah, definitely. And then after that, American Art Collector.
Mm-hmm.
Now I should know this history better. I just don't. International Artist was at the time, if I'm not mistaken, was not published here in the States.
Mm-hmm.
It was created in Australia, but eventually we took it on. Again, I should know this history, but then American Art Collector has been sort of the longest running title, and then Western Art Collector, and then American Fine Art, and then our newest publication is Native American Art Magazine.
Right, and that's about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And that kind of filled the void of American Indian Magazine when it closed. Yeah,
Yep.
And did an excellent job actually. In my opinion, it's more readable. I like the other magazine from a standpoint of didactics, but for most people, people don't want to, they want more broad swath of what is the information and in a readable, not scientific way.
Someone told us once that the difference between our publication and that one was footnotes.
It's true.
And what footnotes sort of connotates.
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, I did a article on Awasira tiles with Michael Horsley, and we had a bunch of footnotes, and you're like, we don't need them. I'm like, yeah, you're right, we don't. We really don't. And
we've used them before.
Yeah.
And I think that magazine was just definitely the kind of magazine there was more footnotes for.
It was all footnotes.
Yeah,
it was all footnotes. So you started that in 2012, and what was your position?
I think it was 2013.
2000. What was your position at that time?
At the time, I was assistant editor.
Yeah, and you kept that position for a very long time, right?
Not too long. I think a year or two, maybe 2 or 3. Eventually, it was deputy editor. We thought it was kind of cute because deputy
dog.
Well, deputy in the West has a kind of a connotation, So, and then I was that I think for 2 or 3 years.
And what's the difference between an assistant and a deputy?
You know what? There's probably like a book somewhere that explains this. It was just more responsibility. Is what it ended
Same
up
pay,
being.
more responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, and then, so you were working pretty fist and glove with the editor at that time, right? And so, where did you go from there? What was the next step you're the man?
I'm the man.
Yeah.
For those 2
I know if there's a problem, I call you.
Yeah.
There's no Josh Rose. There's nobody. I call you if I have a problem. So that definitely means you're the man.
Yeah.
So what does that job as the executive editor, what do you do?
So mostly, I mean, I would consider my first sort of role is just helping define what the magazine is and get the articles that are appropriate for that in the magazine. We're choosing the articles. We're choosing the previews. We're choosing the artists we want to write about. That's the big thing. And then, of course, there's all kinds of little things. We sort of plan the magazine out and choose what articles, what sections we want in each magazine and that sort of thing. I work with, an editorial team. We have an advertising team, and we just kind of make sure everyone's on the same page and we're getting the art seen that needs to be seen.
And how long does it take to set up an issue? In other words, if you have, let's say, a January issue, when do you, as an editor, have to start really getting this on board? Like October?
So we work on the actual issue 2 months out. The actual sort of planning of the magazine takes place even 2 months prior to that, a month or 2 months prior to that. But we hear about things. You know how how the art world is. I mean, some museums plan, 3 or 4 years out.
Right.
So we can. It's kind of nice because we can put things on our calendar that we know we want to cover. Like I could tell you shows that, we want to cover for 2024, 2025.
Yeah.
Because things are that far out. And then it's just filling in the holes, The galleries, they don't know their schedules that far out.
Yeah, I do.
You're good. You're really good.
Yeah, so it's we're going to do a next Glenn Dean show in 2024, as a matter of fact.
Nice.
A big one-man show. So, but more about you, less about me. So tell me how you've seen, so you've been with what, and I'm just going to kind of focus, I think, on Western Art Collector because that's the magazine that I'm in. That's the magazine that I read. That's the magazine that really, to me, is what I think of you when I think of your magazine. I've used some of your other magazines, but for my genre and what I do, it's really more what I do.
Yeah, certainly.
But tell me how you have seen that, because I've noticed changes, big changes actually, from 2013 when you started to 2021, as far as advertisers. Let's just go with that. How, because that's what pays for the magazine. Mm-hmm. How is that? What kind of changes have you seen?
As far as advertisers go?
Yeah, in other words, was it mainly artists that's paying for the bills, or auctions, or galleries, or museums, or maybe there is no change? Maybe you've seen nothing.
I mean, I feel like our client base, like the people who are advertising in the magazine, it's quite robust still.
Mm. Oh yeah, it is definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we get
but the mix seems to have changed.
I mean, I guess I haven't noticed it too much because each month is a little different, and you look at it year after year. I'd love to hear your input on this, but I mean, I think that the mixture is quite nice as far as the artists versus the galleries versus the auction houses and the museums. Museums, we've noticed, and I'm sure this is no surprise to you, museums were struggling last year. Mm. And, we had a bunch of museums that were normal clients, and it was hard. And one of the things that we did last year was we really wanted to emphasize, like, you need to support your museums. If you like a museum, support it, because they were hurting. And I'm really grateful. It seems like all the museums are open and they're going to be showing again. They're going to have shows again, but it was rough. So, I'd love to know your input though.
Well, I've watched not only in your magazine, but other magazines. It seems there was at one point kind of an equal mix, I would say, of artists and galleries, primarily galleries, and not so much museums, not so much auction houses. And in that time frame, I think it's really flipped. Mm-hmm. That if you go through any magazine, it's mainly auction houses that are going to have the most ads, I think. And then museum shows will be there. Lesser, you'll see the same gallerists pretty much, not a lot of different ones. And then artists. So it seems like it's more auction driven. And I bet if you went back, and I don't know this for a fact, but from the beginning of when your magazine, your coverage of auctions would be, minor, and now it's more major, which makes sense. I mean, they're paying the bills, and it's a big component of the art business. That's how I see it.
And so much, I don't, you have more knowledge on the history of the market. I trust your input on this, but it does seem like there are a lot of sales, like auctions right now. I don't know if this has always been the case 10, 15 years ago, but it does seem like there's more. In fact, we're learning about more auctions that are coming up in 2022, ones that haven't existed before. We're really excited about them because it brings art, to collectors.
Yeah, we have one in May 2022 at auction. So.
Nice. So
there you go.
I don't know. I don't know why there's so many. It does seem like, obviously, if there's a need.
Yeah, well, I think it's because that's online and that's the way things have gone.
Yeah,
and people feel comfortable bidding and buying on auctions. Probably a lot of that has to do with eBay. It's been around for a very long time, and so they just feel comfortable, even though, quite frankly, and we run an auction, 1 to 2 a year. This year we had 2, I think. But even though they feel more comfortable, I think sometimes the people that are buying are paying more than they would if they just went directly to a gallery, because a good gallerist is going to put it at the price that they've paid for it, what's fair. And sometimes at auctions they go for so much more. They can.
Yeah.
It just depends. Or there are sometimes it can be just the opposite, and they can go for way less. So, yeah. I get maybe that's part of the deal is that if you know what you're doing and you can watch these, you may be able to find that bargain.
We certainly cover the market.
Yeah, you do.
As it needs to be covered. Like if there's a show or a sale that's happening, we don't want our readers to feel like they're not going to know about it. But I like to think that the market has to be balanced, right? Like you need gallery shows, you need museum exhibitions, you need museum shows, you need auctions. All of it supports, the rest of it. They're all sort of cornerstones to the market, and removing any one of them might not be good for anybody.
No, it shouldn't be. It just shows you what the market is, where it is, and where it's headed. Do you feel like there's less artists that are advertising, or maybe there's more? I don't know.
That differs from month to month. I think we have seen some months where there's fewer artists. We were worried during the pandemic what was going to happen with the artists, and I think that we've seen a lot of growth there as far as artists go. We've heard from countless people the artwork they were selling during the pandemic. I mean, some of them had the best years of their career.
No, it's true.
In 2020,
Mark Bowles just said that to me.
It's wild. And I mean, you could probably spend a whole half hour on why that is. I mean, but it's definitely good for the market. But we don't want to neglect the galleries. We don't want the gallery shows. We don't want to neglect the museum shows, and certainly the auctions. I think they're all important.
Yeah, no, I mean, you go where the money is in some respects, and where the shows are.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not a magazine, that's a well-rounded magazine if you're not covering it all. Yeah, there's no doubt. I also have a question on how I've never asked this question because, frankly, it's out of my hands and doesn't have anything to do with me. But how does a cover? How do you decide on a cover? Does it have to do primarily with the graphics of the piece, or do you look back and go, well, we had 3 cowboys in a row, we should switch it up, or how does that work?
All of those things.
Yeah,
yes.
I would think, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would think that would be some of it.
It's tricky. It's fun. It's honestly, it's the most fun we have every month because we work on we usually choose the covers dead last. Like it's the last thing.
Yeah. And why is that?
I think it's because our designers, in the way that the magazine is uploaded to our printer, the things that have text in them, we have to read those, we have to edit them, there's a lot to them. So we want to get those things up right away. The cover is sort of a slam dunk. It's choosing the image and putting it on there. So we tend to bump it to the end, which is great though, because we get to see all of the art before we decide. And that's sort of key to that. We want to see everything. I mean, how would it make anyone feel if people knew we chose the cover first, right? And sometimes we get shows that add mid-month, shows that we learn about maybe at the last minute, or shows that are added just because, hey, we're gonna have a show in 2 months,
right?
So, we see some artwork throughout the month, and we want to consider everything. And one of the things that I think is important, and I get a lot of all the questions I get about the magazine. Questions about the cover are like those. I get those more than ever.
Mainly from the artists.
Yeah. Artists who want to be on the cover.
Right.
And what I tell everyone is we consider everything. We really do. We will consider everything. And obviously we take into account the size of the shows that month. If there's an important show, do we want to put that on the cover? But then like if we start picking into the individual shows, did we run 3 cowboys or did we run 3 landscapes?
Right.
Or did we run a wolf in September? Do we want to run a wolf in November? Like these sorts of things. So it's fun in the sense that I would like to say that the best artwork ends up on every issue cover, but really like sometimes we choose something great for October, and then in November comes and we go like, oh man, I think this one would have made a better cowboy cover, but we can't have 2 duplicate looking covers, so
right.
It's fun. I think the artwork we do choose for the cover, I've never had any regrets about any of them. After the magazine comes, I'm always proud of everything we pick. In fact, I was looking at one of your we did Stephen Datz.
Yeah.
We're working on January. So January last year, we put Stephen Datz on the cover, and what a tremendous piece that is. A great painting. Yeah, he's so good. He's so good. So I have no regrets about our cover choices, but it's always tricky to take into account the size of the show, the place that the artist is in their career. For instance, we have one artist who I absolutely love. You know him. I won't say his name, but he's fantastic, and we've not had him on the cover yet. And we've had some opportunities, and I keep thinking, okay, I don't want this piece on the cover because it's not that it's not his best. It's just not a major work. And I know that we're probably going to get a major one within the next year. So I hold off when he could get the cover now, knowing that in the next year, he's probably going to have one that's going to just knock it out of the park. So it's tricky. It's tough, but it's...
And do they have to be doing a show in the magazine? There has to be some association with what's going on in that magazine to the cover?
Correct. Okay. Correct. We always want to do that.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. But also, like one of the things we strive for is we want the artwork that's on the cover to be available for purchase. That's not a hard and fast rule. We'll bend on that a little bit, but anyone, I mean, our magazine is really for collectors. We want them to look in the magazine, see artwork that they like, and make the purchase. So to have an image on the cover that they can't buy is sort of not, it doesn't really seem fair.
All right. Huh.
And, we cover museum shows, and we have some historic work that's part of museum exhibitions.
Right.
And those end up on the cover every now and again. But if we have a choice between a piece that's available versus a piece that's not, we tend to go with the piece that's available.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so do you follow how one cover does versus another as far as like maybe sales off the shelf? Can you follow that, in other words?
We can, we can probably track that a little bit.
I was just curious if you did. Like, I know there are some magazines that really, they go, oh, our sales went way up with this cover versus another cover.
I mean, I'm sure we could dig into it and figure it out. It's hard too, because we distribute our magazines. So, I mean, we send the magazine out far and wide, and depending on the size of the shows that month, like for example, we give out a lot of magazines at the Prix de West.
Right.
And, in January, February, January, certainly, there's not as many big shows. So the magazine's going to certainly be seen by our subscribers, but it's not going out to like a show quite like the Prix. So I'm sure we could dig into our numbers and figure it out. I guess I'd be curious.
I'd be interested to see, because they do follow some magazines do follow to see how it does, because I think it helps them kind of, get a sense of what does well and what doesn't, because it's like a book cover, right? A good book cover, you go to, Barnes and Noble, whatever, and you go, wow, book cover's great. And you pick it up and you want to read it.
Yeah.
And I assume you sell things like that in Barnes and Noble. Your magazines are in other places, right? No, you just can't get them by subscription, right?
We offer it other places. Yeah. I mean, you can get them on newsstands in certain places. Yeah. Barnes and Noble certainly is the one that you'll see it probably more often.
I would think that would be the place you would go to look and see what the sell-through rates are, and then you would go, oh, these do really well, and maybe this doesn't do so well.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would assume.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I will get back to you.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some cool a cool story there on what's sold the best.
Yeah, or what sold the least.
Yeah.
We're doing no more goats on the cover of the thing.
Yes, I'm trying to think if we've had a goat cover. I don't know that we have.
Do you have a favorite or a couple favorites covers?
Oh gosh, I feel like the most recent one is always my favorite. I know that's a bad answer.
No, that's a real honest answer, because I always say that with my books, because it's true.
Yeah.
Your last book is the one you like the most because it's closest to you.
I mean, certainly I do think that there's some favorite ones. I don't even know if I can name them to you right now. Just this past year, we've had some really wonderful, that DATS cover that I had mentioned to you was great. We had a Mark Majori cover in May that I really enjoyed with the fall leaves.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Greg Beecham's cover from this past summer, I thought was just spectacular. He did a wolf. I believe for the Prix, I think that's right, the Prix de West issue. So, I mean...
One of my favorites was the Josh Elliott one you did of the cactus with the going through the name of the magazine.
Yeah.
I just thought it was beautifully designed. It was a great painting, too, but it was just beautifully designed.
Josh is so good. Yeah, he's so good.
He's a great talent.
He has this, and he's probably sick of me talking about it. He did a Shiprock painting.
Yeah, I know.
And it was so good.
So good. I loved that painting.
It's just amazing. And I've told him, I'm just like, listen, I can't get over it. It's just too good. Yeah. It's so good.
And he's not the kind of guy who will go and do another. I mean, he might do Shiprock. In fact, I know he has done at least one other. But, it's going to be a different take, a different angle. He's, once he's done it, it's kind of one and done. And then he moves to different sensibilities. So, that'll kind of be it. I mean, he'll do Shiprock. Everyone should do Shiprock.
Yeah.
You don't see it that often, actually, because it's out in the middle of nowhere, right? Yeah. And people want to go for the big, the big names, the Canyon de Chelly or the, Monument Valley kind of stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, the Winged Dove is I mean, that's the spiritual place of the Dene.
Yeah. So. Well, to have the discipline to find something that, is so beautiful and you paint it so well and then not revisit that well over and over again.
That's hard.
The way these artists do it, it's amazing. I was talking in one of our most recent episodes, Kyle Polson.
Oh yeah. I haven't listened to that one though.
He, he had a big auction piece a number of years ago. It was a Native American headdress.
Yeah.
And it's like 6 feet tall. It did like 287,000.
Yeah. That's what kind of broke him loose, right?
Yeah. And I think a lesser artist would have gone out and started doing headdresses once a month.
Yeah.
And Kyle was like, I didn't dare do it. Like, I was just being so careful. I did not want to revisit that over and over again. And I like that. I think there's so many elements about art that are wonderful, but hearing artists being so careful about their choices, I love hearing that.
So so give me the take that how you've changed since 2013 to now, just being exposed to all these artists. I mean, you're right on the front lines with all these people, and you know all the best artists now. You know all the major artists. You know all ones that aren't. But I mean, you really have had intimate relationships for almost a decade now with artists. What do you think how that has changed you? It must have.
I know. I think so. Going back to my previous career, I was always in the arts, whether it was film, music. I was a concert photographer for 10 years, basically. I was involved in music and movies. There was some performance art in there. I did some sports. Like, and been involved in a lot of things, but never fine art. Mm-hmm. So stepping into this world and seeing it all, like, as it's happening, I realize how wonderful it is. I mean, I learned that day one. I remember just like those early issues in the magazine, sort of, meeting the artists. I remember there was Martin Greeley. We were working with Martin, and Martin was, he was Martin Greeley then. Yeah. He was a very famous artist back then.
Yeah.
And I remember just being on the phone with him, like, not just asking him to hurry. Like, I didn't know him very well.
Right.
I just remember being like, hey, Martin, I need this. Can you get this quicker?
Yeah.
Can you get this fast for me? And later on, years later, I look back on it. Gosh, maybe I shouldn't have rushed Martin. I didn't know him very well, but getting to know these guys and seeing their process and seeing how the art comes together, it's remarkable.
Yeah, I thought your podcast with him was exceptionally good.
It was fun. He's a fun guest.
No, I really enjoyed listening to that because I hadn't really listened to Martin talk, and I was like, oh, very articulate, interesting, humble kind of guy. Yeah, so I thought it was interesting. It gave me a different perspective, which was nice.
I can hear his voice is so distinct. I can hear it in my head. Just like I can see a picture of him and I hear his voice.
Yeah,
and it's really nice to listen to. He was a fun guest.
So let's talk about the Native American magazine, because I'm sure that has changed your sensibilities, because you probably never really worked too much with Native American artists until this magazine, and now you guys are, you're really on the forefront of contemporary Native American art too, not just, antique stuff, which was the other magazine that you kind of supplanted, was all more about deceased stuff. This is really about living humans that are producing wonderful work. You want to comment on that at all?
It's been incredibly humbling, especially going to the events. And you and I have bumped into each other at Santa Fe Indian Market a number of times.
Yep.
But seeing these artists, seeing what they're doing, and knowing that they're like taking elements of their culture, of their heritage, and in some cases, they alone are preserving it, them by themselves. Mm-hmm. In other cases, some of the pottery, there's a number of those artists who are working and preserving some of those materials and processes, but it's so humbling to talk to these artists and to see what they're doing, and know, there's this feeling, I think, you just pull someone off the street and talk to them about art, and art's just something pretty you hang in your home, right? Like,
yeah, I can hear people say that.
Yeah, I mean, they love it, they don't love it, they don't hate it, but it's just sort of a thing. It's sort of a neutral thing in their lives. But you talk to the Native American artists and you realize it's everything. Like, it is everything of who they are. It's everything about what they represent. It's everything they want to be.
Right.
And it's so much more. And certainly the Western artists, they get very involved in their careers, but I mean, these Native American artists are so different. And it's just so, like I said, it's very humbling walking around a market and introducing yourself and just listening to these artists talk about their work and their process and where they get their clay and where they get their turquoise or where they get the reeds they use for their baskets.
Right.
It's incredible. I keep using humbling, but that's the thing that I feel when I talk to these artists.
Yeah, I think you see, out of all the fields in Native American art, you have the Jared Chavez type individuals who are highly educated, could do whatever they wanted to do, have, multiple degrees, often, masters, PhDs. Yet, or even senators like Ben Nighthorse Campbell, yet they want to come back and go to the arts. You don't see that a lot in other places that they're, they do all their things and they still are compelled and feel the need to be making art of some type, whether it's painting, sculpture, or, pottery, kachinas, you name it, whatever.
Yeah.
It's all to me in the same basket. I don't see any difference between a Maria Pot and a Tonia Beta painting as far as they're both great objects, that took time and effort and energy. And as you're saying, and I agree, that there is a heritage there. And I would think that gives you just a different sensibility, having gone to all those Indian markets now and interacting with artists, a different sensibility of, your own life maybe.
Oh, definitely. And I keep thinking about this this bumper sticker someone gave me at Indian Market. It said, "This is Tewa Land."
Yeah.
Tewa Land. And I remember there was a point at market this year where someone said, "We need to recognize that we are standing on
Hollowed ground.
On hollowed ground."
They were, yeah.
And it definitely changes your perspective about a lot.
Yes,
And,
that's right.
yeah.
There was Kivas right there on the plaza at one time. So,
Yeah.
Before the Spanish came.
Well, and kind of along those same lines, I remember sitting, our booth, the Native American Art magazine booth for market is right in the center of the plaza, right near where the obelisk was.
Yeah.
And we would get a lot of foot traffic, people who wanted to see the obelisk. And this year it was entirely what remains of the obelisk was boxed up, and there was a sign.
Yeah.
And people would come up and some people would say, "It's good, it's gone." And they were very proud. And they thought, this is part of their, their story they were very happy about. And there were other people who'd come up and say, "Gosh, it's a shame they took that down." But seeing both of those things and just being there in Santa Fe, it really, everything you experience in Santa Fe and in the Southwest in general changes your perspective on things. And I remember when, I'm kind of touching a lot of things here, but when Standing Rock was happening, I don't know how I would have felt about that 10 years ago. But watching it all take place now, under sort of in the world that I was living with in the magazine, it really was like, it hit me. It hit me hard, knowing that those were some of our artists, that those are people out there who are defending not just their lives, but just like everything that they know and hold dear. The magazine has changed so much of my sort of outlook on so much of the Southwest. And I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for every minute of it. Yeah. Every artist I meet, every dealer who is helping these artists, like you have some wonderful Native American artists in your gallery. Every single person that I interact with is changing my opinion in just really exciting ways.
Yeah, you get to see a culture that you might not have understood. You grew up in Arizona, I grew up in New Mexico, so we understand Native culture to some extent, just intuitively because we're around it. But seeing it from the sides versus being involved, deeply involved, is a big difference. And I agree, things like that, like Mauna Kea for me, your Standing Rock, Mauna Kea was for me. They're putting up a big telescope. I'm a scientist by training, but don't put a damn telescope, another one, up on that sacred mountain. That's that's the gods.
Yeah.
That's the leaves. That's where the sites, all the burial sites are. Go to Chile. They'll love to have it. Just and I think you become more sensitive to the sensitivities of Native individuals through their art, really. Through their art, through them, then through their culture.
Yeah.
I think at least that's how I see it. So let's talk about your podcast, because we're getting close to the end here. We started with it, but we really didn't talk about it just a little bit. And so you're doing basically one a week. And give us the name of the podcast, the American Art Collective?
The American Art Collective.
Got it right. Very good.
And it's been a lot of fun. We're taking our 5 titles, our 5 magazines, and finding guests that fit, among all of them or multiple magazines. But the idea is just to give someone, our listeners, something about the American art market every week. And every week it's something different. Sometimes we'll lean more contemporary or more modern. But then other weeks we'll have these great Western artists, and then sometimes Native American artists. In fact, we're planning right now some of our herd coverage for the herd Indian market. and I'm really excited about our guests. No one's confirmed yet, but like the options are just amazing. And I think if you look at all 5 of our magazines, they tell the story of American art. We have a contemporary magazine, we have a Western magazine, we have a magazine that's geared towards artists. We have a historic magazine, which we like to say sometimes it's the dead artists. And then we have the Native American magazine, and all those together tell just a really wonderful story. And so we're taking those stories and just putting them in the podcast and talking to interesting people, artists, curators, gallery owners, all kinds of things. It's been fun though. It's been amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you're having fun after 50, then you'll probably still be having fun after 100, quite frankly.
It's weird. You don't use headphones, but in our studio we use headphones, and just putting the headphones on and hearing your voice.
Yeah.
I thought that would be like the thing that made me like, nope, no thanks. I can't do this. There's something really nice just about sitting in a quiet spot with someone else and just hearing their voice just real calmly through your headset and just having a conversation with them. It's oddly just soothing and nice. I enjoy it immensely.
Well, you're going into a story. It's like having a conversation with somebody over a cup of coffee. Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, every guest is different. Mm. Every guest has their own abilities that they've, maybe experiences that they've had. And so the ones that are very, like yourself, I mean, this is an easy thing for you to do, but for some people, they may not have ever even been done a mic interview before, and it's you can feel it right away.
I mean, I feel it because we record the intro, we do everything live there with our guest.
When you say everything live,
not live, but we use a hot mic. We try not to edit. I think that's kind of the way you do.
Yeah, I don't edit.
Yeah, last thing I want is a guest that says, "Oh, you can cut this out later," and now we're editing this whole thing.
Yeah,
and I just tell people, just treat it like it's live. Like,
yeah,
once it leaves your mouth, there's no stopping it. Yeah. You're done. But I don't know where I was going with that. But
that's okay. On how you go about doing the interviews with your artists. So, do they come and sit in a studio always, or you do some with Zoom?
We do some with Zoom, and I think that's just going to be the way of the future. We do have a lot of great places in the Scottsdale area that attract artists. We have the Scottsdale Artist School. We have museums. We have galleries. So many of our artists do sort of cycle into Scottsdale frequently. So if we can get them on the podcast, we will, like in person. But otherwise, we've been using Zoom and no complaints so far.
Yeah. It's just, it's another platform to get the word out. So,
yeah,
which is what we do. So tell me any last words of wisdom that somebody who just wants to be a journalist, and maybe is in the arts, somebody that is in that field, because that's a really tough, competitive way to make a living, and kind of, difficult to know if you're going to be, around in 6 months or a year.
I keep thinking, we were talking about sort of my movie career earlier and sort of that aspect. And one thing that always has really resonated with me, Roger Ebert used to say movies were empathy machines.
That's interesting. I like that.
I like that too. And that sort of helped me get into movies, just have a different state of mind. And I feel like art is the same way. Art has a way of just hooking into us and pulling at us in really unique ways. I think of art as sort of empathy machines too. And so being able to tell the stories of the artists, of the collectors, and everyone else who's involved with this, and just finding their connections to the art, whether it's, we hear this a lot. My parents took me to a museum when I was 10.
Right.
The artwork was boring, but there was one piece that I loved. And we bought a print, and as we left the museum, and I hung it on my wall, and that was how their art career started. And there's something about art and about film and about music and about these things that we all love that has the power to like hook us in really interesting ways. So if you were to sum up my career or what I'm doing right now with the magazines, I just want to tell those stories. I want to tell the stories about why these things have such a hold on us and why we don't want to let them go. and why we want to bring them into our lives and hang them on our walls and put them on our screens and, this sort of thing. That's what I love about all of this, about the
put
arts.
Them on our NFTs.
Yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, no. Are you doing NFTs?
We will be doing NFTs.
Nice.
It's going to be a major component of the art world.
It's something I know is like on the horizon. We can't.
It's not on the horizon, baby.
It's here. It's here.
It's a multi-billion-dollar, thing already. Yeah. How are you going to deal with that?
We actually have some things we're working on.
Yeah.
We're NFTs are on our radar.
Yeah.
It's weird though. It's just so strange. I mean, if someone told you in 15 years this could be the future of the art market, would you have believed them?
Yes.
NFTs, really?
Yes. As soon as I think I'm an early adapter to blockchain technology. So
yeah, I could see you as an early adapter to that.
Yeah. So, but when non-fungible tokens started coming out and people are going, oh, this is not going to be real. And I'm like, oh, this is totally real. If you don't think it's real, go to the YouTube and find some kid who's 6 weeks old. It's flipping the phone with their foot. It's going to be, your children's world. They're going to live in the metaverse, and they're going to be excited to have their Josh Elliott on the metaverse wall or whatever. I mean, it's a combination of gaming and collectability and art and, a different world. So how that affects you in your business, I haven't really thought about that, but it will, and without a doubt. How, I don't know exactly.
Here's a question for you. Do you think the audience for artwork that hangs on a wall
Yes.
is the same as are the same collectors going to buy NFTs?
Yes.
Really?
I do. Mm-hmm. Yep. They will when everyone else is showing them their NFTs.
Yeah.
Oh, here's the one I got. Yeah, that's my NFT. Couldn't get the painting, or I didn't want the painting. I wanted the NFT. And you're going to go, wow, that's super cool. Yeah, come visit my house. Get in your avatar. We'll go over and I'll show you my whole collection. I've got some amazing ones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I just saw this story over the weekend, this past week, of this guy who some sort of hacker who went in and stole all these NFTs.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
And he just dumps them. Like, how do you, when you can right click an NFT and save it to your desktop, how do you?
Well, I mean, these are all put in wallets and on the blockchain. So
yeah.
Once it's on the blockchain,
but technically you own it. But
you do own it.
But like
technically,
yeah, you do own it. There's so many.
You own the JPEG.
Yeah.
You don't own the rights to sell it. You don't own the rights. And sometimes they could put it in the smart contract, but you don't own any of the rights to, print it out or anything other than it's yours, and no one else owns that.
I know there's what I'm curious to see is it get more serious, because so much of it seems kind of jokey.
$69 million for a Beeple? That's pretty serious. Third most expensive.
But do you think that's serious art though? Like, is it?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I do. Yeah, I do, in its own form.
Yeah.
Is Duchamp's urinal serious art? Pretty amazing. I mean, a lot of people would say it's a urinal, but at that time, and whatever it was, 1917 or whatever, 18, I mean, that's pretty groundbreaking and still has legs today, 100 years later. So it's a different thing. I mean, when something sells for $60 million at Christie's, that's a digital image, you have to take that serious. Yeah. That's the third most expensive living artist that's ever sold. Wow. You have to take that seriously. And you have to, I mean, it's harder for us because, I mean, this is really not about, we've strayed off the
but
Michael Clawson,
in an interesting way.
Clawson's, life, which is really what I'm interested in. But when everyone is changing, that is your children, or our grandchildren, whatever. It's a different world. When Facebook becomes Meta, because there's a couple reasons, I'm sure. One, maybe they just didn't think their branding was so good. But the other thing is he's very serious about this is a new thing that's going to be a new world, a new universe that people are going to embrace. I mean, Seoul, Korea, just in 2023 will have all their stuff on the metaverse. You want to go buy your driver's license, you can do it through the metaverse. You want to go to a concert, metaverse. You want to go through and do anything in the city, metaverse. It'll all be there. 2023. That's very soon.
That seems like, I mean, in the exhibition world, that's half an exhibition away.
Yeah. So I mean, it is a real thing, and people are spending real money and taking it seriously. And if you're living in a metaverse, you might want your, Ed Mel on the wall in your metaverse. And so I think you can't look at it as through our eyes. I think you have to look at it through your children's eyes.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that will, and this is a very young thing. Really 2018 is really when this stuff started to really click. I mean, Bitcoin's been only around through 2012 or so. So things are moving quickly in this field, and you're going to be getting more and more people asking about it. How it relates exactly to Western and Native arts, which is kind of what I specialize in, it will relate. It will have legs, but it's hard to see exactly the path. But people are going. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a not real thing.
It's why, I mean, we follow it. We're following it more.
You have to.
Yeah, you have to.
I'm sure you're getting questions, right?
We are getting questions. Strangely, not too many from the Western crowd.
Yeah.
Our contemporary magazine, I know that I think they've gotten some inquiries about NFTs, but I just talked to Billy. I was talking to Billy Schenk yesterday, and he talked about, he's kind of like you. I feel like he's kind of an early adopter to things, and
I don't know about that, but
yeah, that's what his
words.
His words.
But for art, he is. I mean, he really is in that sensibility. I mean,
Uh-huh.
look what he's doing in the '60s and '70s with his pop art. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
But I could totally see like an Ed Mel or a Billy Schenk NFT, sort of having an appeal.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, I guess there really is, and that's I guess the thing is with NFT, there's no limit. You can
No limit.
Yeah.
No limit. So, and it allows artists something that they can't have in the other world, is they can get a % of the sale after. So you do an NFT, it sells, then it sells again. The artist still gets some money.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever %, they'll get a small % of that secondary sale. That's very compelling to artists.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big bugaboo for most artists, probably all artists, that they make a painting and they sell it for 50 grand, and then it goes to an auction house and they sell it for 100,000, and the auction house makes money. The person who bought the painting makes money, but the artist doesn't get anything on this. So in NFTs, that's not the case. So they have smart contracts. So if you're an artist, you'd be like, yep, I like that idea. Sounds pretty good.
It's exciting to see where it might go.
Well, it's going to change. It's going to happen. It'll be, probably the metaverse is 10 years to build out, according to my son, and my son seems to be very much on top of this. So that's how long it'll probably take the metaverse to build out. So 2031.
My oldest daughter's 6. I'm sure she's going to be explaining it to me in a couple of years.
Oh yeah, she's going to be heavily involved in it when she's 12 or 13. That's where she's going to meet all her friends.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of issues. I mean, we'll have all sorts of social and emotional and physical issues with people being, in those kind of worlds and not in the real world. So luckily, that will hopefully impact me less than other things. But yes, that's coming. These are coming. Well, you might think about how it'll affect your magazine. I mean, you may have a virtual magazine. I mean, that may be one of the big things. You'll be all virtual. They can buy NFTs off your magazine as it comes out. Who knows? I mean, you might do better. I don't know.
So I without saying too much, we are having these conversations right now.
Yeah.
Because when NFTs started, I remember it was definitely like a pandemic. I know probably before the pandemic, but it was
2018, really.
Yeah, but it was sort of the pandemic when it sort of entered the lexicon, right?
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
And just reading those, that was a fun weekend. Just reading articles about NFTs when it was brand new. Mm-hmm. It's really hard to describe to people. I understand it, I think probably 90 to 95%, and there's still like an element of mystery to it. It's hard. It's a hard thing to grasp, but it is on our radar for sure.
I mean, it's directly related to cryptocurrency. So that's what makes it possible. And that's all related to blockchain, because it's all on blockchain. And blockchain is going to be the new internet. So that changes. It's going to change the world. Blockchain changes the world. So we're at 1996 or 5 with blockchain right now, as where the internet was at that time, in my opinion. So, this will be on the ethosphere for hopefully decades, and somebody can go back and go, "Oh my God, that guy was so off." Yeah, it didn't take 10 years of the metaverse; it took 3.
Yeah.
But what's the metaverse? Hopefully,
the beauty of hindsight, right?
Yeah, the beauty of hindsight. But that's how I kind of see it.
Yeah.
So, I think it's important to embrace those kind of components, or you're left behind.
Oh, definitely.
Whether you're an art gallery or a magazine, and you guys have embraced a lot of that stuff.
Hey, we try, and we've certainly. You're a great example. The things that you've done, you definitely are. Early adopter. We're talking about that. That seems like what you guys are doing. So if we can just follow your lead a little bit, we'll be grateful.
All right, I'll tell you the secrets later.
Thanks.
All right, Michael Clawson. Well, thank you very much. You're here to see all the things that are going on this big weekend of Tucson, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me on. It's been a blast. It's been really great.
Yep, and as promised, I'll get back when I'll be on your podcast for you here in the next, 2 years, 3 years?
I'm hoping the next 2 or 3 weeks. We'll see, though, right?
We'll work it. No, for sure. I'd love to go on.
Would love to have you on.
Yeah. I think we've done it all, though, right? You could probably just download this, put it on your thing, and I've talked more on this podcast than I ever did.
I got some questions for you. So when we do ours.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
You'll be going to the internet. Oh, there's a photo. I'm going to talk about that photo.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what photo you pulled. I don't know. I have no clue.
I'll show it to you. It was that newspaper when I think you were probably in high school. All right, Michael Clawson, thank you very much.
Thanks,
All right,
Mark.
Bye-bye.
Bye.